Yeah, that trailer is worthy of recognition. Our friends, The Understory, do a damn good job. This is one of my favorites. Welcome to the 45th Annual Mill Valley Film Festival. I'm K.D. Davis, Senior Film Programmer here. Been here a minute, 2, 3, or maybe a couple of decades, and I cannot wait to present this film to you. One of my favorites of the film festival, and a U.S. premiere, Boy from Heaven. What a movie, what a movie. A film that won this year's Cannes Film Festival Screenwriting Award and was, new news, recently selected as Sweden's entry for Best International Film at the upcoming Oscars. Let's hope it goes all the way. So worthy, so worthy. I want to thank our fabulous friends at the Consulate General of Sweden and the Barbara Osher Pro Suecia Foundation for their generous support of Swedish films and film programming at the festival, not just during the festival, but also year-round at the Smith-Raffel Film Center. And that's where the festival goes on year-round. As a matter of fact, we'll be doing an Academy selection of Best International Film feature selections right after the film festival. Let's hope that this film comes back. You're going to want to talk about it with your friends. Recommend tomorrow's screening if they can get a ticket, because it's playing one more time at the film festival. So it is now my incredible pleasure and my honor to introduce the director of Boy from Heaven, who's joining us and is in-house right now, Tarik Saleh.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I'm a bit nervous. American premiere. It's wonderful to have you here. I'm not going to say too much before the film. I just want to give you a little bit of context. So the place that I describe in the film is called Al-Azhar University, and it's in Cairo. It's one of the world's 3 oldest universities. Only Bologna and Oxford is older. It was built 972 by the Fatimids, and it's probably the world's largest university with 300,000 students. And but what's more important is that it has become the Vatican of Sunni Islam. And its principal, Sheikh Al-Azhar, or the Grand Imam, is equivalent to the Pope. So you can imagine that whoever rules Egypt wants to have a say about what this man says. But we'll talk after the film. Hope you enjoy it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Please welcome the director of Boy from Heaven, Tarik Saleh. Wow. It's a wowzer. It's a wowzer.
Thank you.
I feel like the film is so tightly wound, and yet there's so much space in it. It's quite amazing construction. So let's start with something a little bit personal, perhaps. You were born and raised in Sweden, and your father is Egyptian, as was your grandfather, I understand. Can you talk a little bit about how your past did or did not inspire this script?
Yeah. So, like most children of immigrants, you carry your story within you because you get reminded every single day by your parents that you wouldn't be where you are unless it wasn't for the sacrifices that your grandparents did and their ancestors. And so what's moving to me, just being here today, is that, you know, my grandmother and grandfather, they were born in villages in the Nile Delta, you know, and in the 30s, I mean, my grandmother went from her village to get an education, you know, which must have been so hard, you know. And then my grandfather did the same, and he went to Al-Azhar, to this university. They married, and she got the certificate from the king at the time to be allowed to work, and they were teachers, so they went to this fishing village that I describe in the film to teach children of fishermen. When I'm here today, and my father would be like, yes, this is exactly how it is, I wouldn't sit here and show you this film if it wasn't for the fact that they actually walked from their villages and got an education, you know? So the idea for this story came to me. I reread Umberto Eco's In the Name of the Rose, and I was, oh, sorry. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so I was like starting to play this game with myself. Could I tell a story like this, but from within Sunni Islam? And the answer to that question was, I probably shouldn't, you know. But if you would, then it would be something like this. I started to sort of tell myself the story, and I wrote it. And as I was writing it, I started to also ask myself what kind of sacrifices my grandparents had made when they got their educations. And somewhere on, I realized that what they probably sacrificed was innocence, you know? Because when you learn, you also know. And when you know, you have to act, you know?
Is there a little John le Carré in there, the late, great John le Carré?
Not a little. No, what happened actually, so I'm a fanatic. I'm a Jean le Carré fanatic. I'm guilty. So when the film was greenlit, it was budgeted, everything. And then Jean le Carré died. And I reread all his books. I had read all his books. I realized I have to rewrite the script. It's not good enough. And it was a detail. But it was that Smiley would never tell his informant what the real mission is. And I knew that that was going to create problems for me, because you as a movie audience don't like when we as filmmakers lie to you. That's one of the worst sort of sins you can commit as a filmmaker. So it was a big challenge, because of course Ibrahim, the colonel here, he is hiding from Adam what his real mission is. So it was very difficult. Yeah.
Thank you for revealing that. About Colonel Ibrahim, let's jump there. What an amazing character! His beige suit, his aviator glasses, his shaggy hair. You can't be expected to know this, but you all might have been thinking Peter Falk and Columbo, Judd Hirsch, some old Jewish guy in a trench coat. It just comes to mind in the classic 70s pantheon of what a fabulous character. So your lead actor who plays Ibrahim, Fares, starred in your film The Niall Hilton Incident, and let me make a plug for that. Not only did it win at Sundance, the Grand Jury Prize, by the way, but you can get it. It's available, and it should not be missed. Another amazing film. So is Ibrahim based on a real character? character? And if not, how did you? I'm just dying to know his backstory and how you conceived of him.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, he's the character I sort of identify most with. And it's this confusing thing. So I'm 50 years old, and I, a lot of times, feel lost in this new world, you know? I don't understand it. And at times, I don't agree with the new ways, you know? But the world is constantly changing. And one thing that Fares said when he read the character, he said, I think I smile a lot. And I said, what are you hiding when you're smiling? What sadness are you hiding? And let's try to find out. And I think that in a way, for me, to put it simple, this could be a story about a man that has lost his faith but regains it, and a young man that loses his faith, and that they sort of almost change places, trade places. Fares is very close to me personally, so it's very easy for me to work with him. But I said to him, listen, because he was involved, he wanted this costume and this glasses and this hair and everything. And I said, you look like an angry old woman in that outfit. and maybe you're too funny. He said, I promise you, I will not be funny. I promise you will not laugh at me in the end. I said, okay, you better prove it. But it was a good challenge, because every time he walked onto set, I couldn't stop smiling. I mean, he looked like my grandmother.
Oh, and what about Tarik Saleh? Such a professional, and you were casting professionals. This is not a director working in documentary. You were looking for the best actors that and you found one in the young man, the fisherman. Yeah.
There is actually an interesting thing that I did with Taufik. Taufik, I've seen him in some films, and he's a very particular kind of actor. He's Palestinian, but went to a Jewish boarding school. So he speaks fluent Hebrew, Spanish, Arabic, English. I mean, it's one of those guys that can sort of move through different worlds. So to me, that was fascinating. I gave him the part without a test screening. And I've never done that before. I did it because I wanted him to feel chosen, like the character in the film. And I wanted both him and me to question whether it was the right choice or not. And I think that I'm very happy I did that, because he put so much of his own pain onto the screen. And I think that we, you know, in a way, he's a man without a land, moving around in different countries, you know. So I thought that the character had to be that.
Yeah, absolutely. It works so perfectly, these two that match each other. And like you say, one who regains faith. When we meet him, he's just looks so dissolute. That's the colonel, and the other who, in the end, is even sharper than the head of state security. So the film, let's talk a little bit about politics, if you don't mind. Both the Niall Hilton incident and this film, power and politics and corruption at the highest levels of Egyptian society. I imagine you may be perhaps a persona non grata in Egypt. So can you tell us if that's true, and how did you shoot this film? Where did you shoot this film? How could it even be done?
Yeah, so I was thrown out of Egypt 3 days before I was going to shoot Niall Hilton incident. And it was brutal. State security just said that we know where your family is. You have 5 days to leave. After that, we can't guarantee your safety. So when I sat in the taxi going to the airport, I was looking out the window. It was 7 in the morning. I saw the sun go up over the Nile. And I just realized this is the last time I'm here. And it was very heartbreaking. And people have asked me after, was it worth it? And I say, absolutely not. It wasn't worth it. But you have to do it anyway, you know, because I have a Swedish passport. It is my duty to not censor myself. I mean, as long as I can sort of just tell a story. And I don't, the paradox is I don't see this as a political film per se. I see it as a story. But every film is political. And in what is also, of course, with this story is that in Egypt, the struggle between the priest and the pharaoh has been going on since long before we started counting time in our part of the world. You know, it was always the case. It was always this power struggle. And what is interesting, I'll just give you a nugget about, because a lot of people don't know, most people don't know anything about Islam, which is strange because Islam is on the news every day. And still most people don't even know that this place exists, which is strange, I think. Because most Egyptians know about the Pope and the Vatican and the difference between a Protestant and a Catholic, and, you know, which, and one thing with Sunni Islam that is a real problem, an internal problem, is that there is no real hierarchy. In Shia Islam, you have the Ayatollah. But in Sunni Islam, any lunatic can declare a fatwa. So you can have a guy in a cellar in Brooklyn declaring a fatwa. What is a fatwa? It's good to, because, you know, we know a fatwa because of the fatwa against Salman Rushdie, for example.
Yes.
But the fatwa is a religious recommendation. And that sounds innocent, right? But it's actually very powerful. Because if you're a believer, you will follow the recommendation rather than follow a law. Because if you end up in hell, it's worse than going to prison, you know? So in a way, those fatwas are very, very powerful. And the most powerful fatwas come from the Grand Imam, the Sheikh Al-Azhar. And fortunately, the Grand Imam is a very reasonable person. Historically, he has been sort of a voice of moderation. So for example, for a long time it was a big problem, as you probably know, in Africa with women's circumcision, you know? And that's an African tradition, it's not an Islamic tradition. So both Christians and Muslims and tribal people do this. So about 15 years ago, Sheikh Al-Azhar at the time, it's not the same Sheikh Al-Azhar as now, declared a fatwa that it's against Islam to do it. And that was very important, you know. So, for example, just a couple of months ago, he did a fatwa that if you touch the Bible as a Muslim, you need to clean yourself before, because the Bible is a holy book. And that's, of course, a way for him to build bridges between religions. So he has also done very stupid fatwas, you know. So it's not like he's not how could I say, Dalai Lama, but he is a voice of moderation and a voice of sort of trying to build bridges. But the Egyptian president needs his blessings for the laws. Because otherwise people will just say, well, that's just the law. I follow what God wants me to do. So every law that passes has to sort of be surrounded with a religious recommendation. And sometimes he says no. So this power struggle constantly goes on.
I read in your production notes that this dialogue between the state security and Al-Azhar and the leadership there is close in physical space. In fact, you wrote, I think, that they're right across the street from each other. Yeah. That's how close the head of state security institutional headquarters is to the Grand Imam and the university.
It's true. Yeah. It's true. Al-Azhar lies on one side of the street, and the head of state security on the other side of the street. And that street should, of course, never be crossed. I mean, if things are as they should in Egypt. Right. I also want to say that the film was shot in Turkey, in Istanbul, because I couldn't shoot in Egypt.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. You shot this film with hundreds and hundreds of extras and just during COVID. So you were making a thriller at a particular time, and I have heard you say that was almost like two thrillers going on. Can you explain?
I mean, anyone who shot the film during COVID knows that it was, I mean, I remember the first meeting in Turkey, I said, we need to test all the extras. And the Turkish production just said, listen, we're going to be straight with you. We're not going to test the extras. And here's the reason why. Because they will go home to their families at night. We can't afford to house them. And they'll come back with COVID. So every day there was this testing of the sort of inner circle. Mm-hmm. And so that was scary. There's a lot of CGI in this film. I mean, of course, because I had to. There are scenes. I mean, there's so much people, mm-hmm. And I grew up in a special effects studio. So my father was doing special effects. So I was very comfortable with that. But I hate when you see that it's special effects. So I hope you didn't notice it.
No, we did not. Now I'm going to open up to a couple of questions with the time we have, because this film is so rich. I see your hand in the front.
I'd like you to touch a little bit, if you could, on the religious intolerance in Egypt.
Yeah.
So the question is whether Tarik can speak on religious intolerance in Egypt.
Yeah. It's the biggest tragedy of Egypt, what you're talking about. And it's a learning lesson for the rest of the world that when you get rid of or treat minorities bad, your country becomes, ultimately, it loses its intelligence, its diversity. I think it's a huge tragedy. What happened when Egypt had its national revolution with Nasser was that Nasser gave the minorities in Egypt weeks to become Egyptians. And people just left because they didn't trust him. And I think they had good reasons not to. We live in a world where right now in Sweden, like 22% voted for a party that mm-hmm. was formed by Nazis. Mm-hmm. So it's not an isolated situation. I think it's a tragedy, and what I can say is that Al-Azhar have and they have tried now to sort of work against the prosecution because during when the Muslim Brotherhood had the power in Egypt, it was just intolerable for the Christian minority. And it's not a small minority, it's 10% of the population. So it's huge. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Let's take, one more question on the film, the script, and I see this gentleman. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for showing this. Great movie. So I'm curious, did you know all along that's how it would end?
No.
So the question is, if you don't mind, I'll repeat it, that it looked like it, to you and maybe to others, that it was leading toward a very unhappy ending, like someone was going to get killed, or more than one. But you felt it was more of an uplifting ending, the question being, did you know all along how you were planning to end the story?
No, when I write the script, I don't know how it's going to end, because then it's not fun to write it. And I felt when I was writing it, oh my God, they're going to kill him. He's going to die. There is no way out. And I have children, and I was much more cynical before I had children. I would have ended it with him dying before I had kids. But now when I have kids, I cannot, he had to survive. And I felt that, but it's still bittersweet. I mean,
yeah.
I think he loses something that is very precious to him. And he loses his innocence, in a way. And I think that, to me, the big question in the film is, what is the price of an education? No, so I didn't know, and but I felt that I could not let him die.
Yeah, and yet, like you say, bittersweet. We see the shot when he embraces his local imam, and we are focusing on him, and you know he is wondering, what path did you lead me on? How much did you know? How much complicity was happening right here in my village? And in the end, when his father says, what did you learn? It's for us to decide, what did he learn? There's no obvious answer. Thank you all for coming to the U.S. premiere of this fabulous film. Tarik, thank you so much for your generosity and for being here. All right. Tell everyone, one more screening tomorrow. There are still a few tickets up at the Rafael.